I got interested in filmmaking because when I was a teenager in Puerto Rico, where I grew up, my high school had a closed circuit television station. So all the classrooms had TVs, and there was a student that was elected by the student body that would read news, but also all the people in different grades had the opportunity to play videos through the TV system for all the school to watch, promoting like school dances or the upcoming like volleyball tournament or whatever. And so I used to intern at a television station, and so I had access to pretty nice like linear video editing equipment. And my friend had a VHS video camera, and so we started making these silly videos promoting school dances or Spirit Week or whatever, and we used to have so much fun doing that. And so honestly, like before I picked up a camera, I had no fucking idea what I wanted to do with my life, and that was it. You know, just making these sort of advertisements for my high school piqued my interest, and then I applied to film school, and I guess the rest is history. NCIF is an attempt to synthesize the main ideas put forth in a book called Endgame by American writer Derek Jensen, and to promote ideas of critiques of civilization, not just Jensen's, but sort of promote the larger anti-civilization scene in North America. And it was a bit of a labor of love. I started the film in 2006. I attempted to get funding through several conventional sources, and I was repeatedly denied. And I finally decided to do a crowdfunding project. And I did the project piecemeal over 5 years. And in 2011, I, finally called it quits. I decided to say that the film was done, and took it on tour around the world. I do think that it's important to reach people from outside the anarchist and activist milieus. With that said, I do think that it really depends on what the focus or what the target audience of what you're doing is. For example, for NCIF, I was not necessarily interested in going outside of those milieus. I was trying to target people who were mostly radicals or people who were on the fence about a number of different issues. On NCIF specifically, one is that the environment is primary. Like we need to fight to protect the environment as fast as possible and as hard as possible, because without a living planet, we just don't get to exist. But also, I want to tackle the issue of violence versus non-violence. And those are issues that to try to explain those to an unpoliticized, like a mainstream audience, might have been more challenging and would have taken more time and resources. Where I wanted to skip a bunch of different concepts in NCIF, like for instance, I don't explain what capitalism is because I felt that my audience already knew and already had like an anti-capitalist critique, but an audience that may not have as deep an affinity for environmental causes, or who might not have an analysis of decolonization, or who might not know much about indigenous issues, or who might be an audience of radicals who are essentially pacifists. And so I think I think that it's useful to create media that's meant, quality media I should say, that's meant specifically for our milieu, to basically further our debates within our scenes. The main motivating factors for me to make films are when I wake up in the morning and I read the news and I hear that the world has reached 400 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere. Like that's an alarm. I think filmmakers have not just an opportunity, but they have a responsibility, a duty to add more radical analysis to explain what's happening in the world right now. And in my own context, I do a variety of different medias, not just documentary films, but like also a lot of web videos. And I have seen how that work has impacted people, specifically in localities, like in Vancouver, where I used to live. A lot of the work that we did communally there as the Vancouver Media Co-op was, I think, instrumental in mobilizing people against the Olympics in 2010. And so I think that filmmaking is a powerful tool, and it's also a really fun thing to do as well. It's like it's not, it doesn't feel like work to me, and so I when I wake up in the morning, I'm excited to create films, but also to hope that I honor the people out there who are fighting the good fight, and I don't know what else. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. Why documentary as opposed to another form of filmmaking? I'm a little bit conflicted about the documentary form. While I like it, I think that there's a misconception that documentary means journalistic or unbiased, and my films are definitely not unbiased. I can certainly call them documentary, but I think that some people may label them maybe as propaganda. But I think that in the past 20 years or so, I think ever since like Michael Moore really popularized the form as a viable way to seek entertainment, I think that documentary filmmaking has been accepted by the public at large, and so you're really able to explain things that you couldn't possibly explain on a newscast, for instance, or a television show, a little bit more in depth, and hopefully be able to whet people's appetite in the hopes that they mobilize, and in the hopes that they put down the remote control or leave the theater and actually get involved and take action. As a good friend once told me, all art is political, or I guess all art should be political. When I look at the things that politicize me, that had the biggest impact in my politicization, I would say that music, specifically hip hop, was like the primary. And art, music, things that forms that enter through your heart and not through your rational brain, can make a larger impact and can make you open up yourself to ideas that you might not otherwise be open to. Like if a person is making a speech and you already know that this person is coming from a certain political point of view, you might already be like close to this person's point of view. But I think that if you hear a good beat, if you hear a good melody, if you hear some good poetic lyrics, you might get into the groove of those things and sort of put your guard down and actually listen to what people are trying to say, and maybe be open to a more radical message, or be more open to other ideas. And I think art is a radical scene or a radical movement without a strong cultural production, without a strong art scene. It's a dead movement. The current projects that I'm working on, it's like right now I'm promoting a film I just finished about the Quebec student strike of 2012. It's called Street Politics 101, and it's a short film. It's a short documentary, 30 minutes, and it tries to explain Quebec student politics to a North American Anglo audience. So it's not for a Quebecois audience that might know more of the nitty-gritty of the student strike, but trying to honor what happened here and trying to inform people outside of the French-speaking Quebecois world who might not have known that the Quebec student strike was happening. Ongoing for the 7th year, I'm still doing a news show that I do on my website. It's called It's the End of the World, as we know it, and I Feel Fine. And it's news and commentary about radical movements around the world. Usually there's music involved, usually there's an interview, and now it's like I'm about to hit like the 200th episode pretty soon of that show. And also working on creating frameworks for empowering communities, specifically indigenous communities, on how to create their own media. And so I'll be heading to so-called British Columbia this summer to teach people of the Unistoten clan, of the Wet'suwet'en Nation, how to shoot video, how to edit video, how to publish a video on the internet, so that they in the remote community, and I should say that it's a community that's blockading I think now 7 oil and gas pipelines from reaching the Pacific. We want to help them to be able to broadcast news from their encampment, which is really in the middle of the woods, and tell the stories of their struggle to stop oil and gas infrastructure from entering to their traditional territories. In terms of the support the documentary films receive in Canada, I I've been distributing my films in a pretty grassroots way pretty much all my life, and that is basically all I know. I think that I think specifically filmmakers should, as much as they can afford it, be a little more generous with how their films are shared in private screenings, for instance. I think sometimes a lot of small communities who would like to screen certain films will not do that because to own the rights of, or to pay for the rights of those films is prohibitive, and so those communities don't benefit from the information that those films provide, and the filmmaker suffers from not having the exposure in those communities. And I mean, I'm not going to ask people to adopt my position, which is an anti-copyright position. Like I don't put any licensing fees to my films, but I think that I think that documentary is I guess some people are trying to make it Canada's like national art form. I think that if it's going to be Canada's national art form, then Canadians should be more able to share films more fluidly, and I think that the barriers to sharing those films, which are usually monetary, should be knocked down a little bit, or at least reduced. The work that Cinema Politica is doing is extremely important. I think that avenues for radical filmmakers such as myself to distribute their work are very limited, and Cinema Politica provides a viable alternative for these films to reach communities that may not get may not live in Montreal, for instance, where there's like radical screenings all the time, and may be able to be exposed to ideas that they might not be exposed to if networks like the Cinema Politica network didn't exist.